Okay, great. So this is ethics. I think we're going with ethics first. So hi, how is your morning going? Yay. I'm very glad to be here with you all. My name is Rebecca, for those of you I haven't met. And there are a lot of us. And I really want for the course of the morning for us to feel comfortable sharing answers and thoughts and anxieties and questions and all of those wonderful things and discussing together. So what I'd love for us to do, and Michelle, so Michelle's online. She can wave. Just know this is a part of our song right here is Michelle. And I'm so glad to see you. And then we're going to just go around and everyone holler out your name. And I say holler out because there are a lot of us, but I don't mean you have to really holler. I just want us to introduce ourselves. And then, okay, so for people who just did Sanskrit with me, please help me remember, I'm going to write down this recommended reading for you on the whiteboard before the end of the day, just not right now. So help me remember that. Okay, so let's start in the back. Katie. Cool. Again. Sarah.
I'm Joe.
Elizabeth. I'm Rachel. Katie. Jamie. Marty.
Ricky.
Jenna. Amanda.
Scott.
Raina. Andy.
Mark.
Jen. Eden.
Leslie.
Narita. Jessica. Holly. Ellie. Tasha. Barbara. And we will quiz everyone on everyone's names. You will not be able to leave today until you know your names. Just kidding. Not at all. I would love to for us to start this session talking about yoga ethics. And we will refer to a handout in the manual that is on page 7. So it's all the way at the beginning, section 1.1. Section 1.1. And I'll share the screen, Michelle, but probably not right this moment. Why do we even discuss ethics when it comes to teaching yoga? What does that mean for us? Taking responsibility. I love that. As Amber Richmond, our owner and amazing co-founder and teacher says, yoga is the art of personal responsibility. So taking responsibility. Jen, what more would you like to say about that?
How you treat people, how you treat yourself, how you treat the state you're in. It's all of your ethics. If you just throw yourself everywhere, then you lack respect. For yourself, for others. Or if you walk into a yoga class and you're quiet and you're respectful, or you say hi.
It does make sense. And it's also an excellent, so she was saying you're being respectful of the space and of others, but I think that's a great metaphor for taking this off the mat as a yoga teacher. You are now stewards of yoga, which means you live your life in an ethical way. You practice yoga ethically, you also practice teaching ethically, which means you in life, we might be messes. We might go through times and things where we're just a mess, but we try not to throw that mess on everyone else. And remembering that this is a business, this is a place of business, and it is a place of well-being. So we definitely don't want to throw our messes on our students. Why else would we discuss ethics? What comes up whenever I say the word ethics? What comes up for you? Yeah.
I think people become vulnerable when they go to the studio, and so I think to allow people to be vulnerable.
Vulnerability is a huge piece of it. We are in a vulnerable state with our students. Yes. And remembering the ethics and principles of why we're teaching and of what we're teaching is very important. What else?
I think, even I've seen it on TV, like people making jokes as yoga instructors, they make it sexual, like you're touching somebody in ways that can be misconceived. And you see girls go to classes because the guy teacher is amazingly hot. That's not the purpose of yoga. That's not what we stand for. So we have to respect the lineage that it came from and why we're touching people.
Jessica, yes, that's huge. We're not just in an emotional vulnerable state, we're in a physical vulnerable state. And yes, a lot of what's like joked about in the West with that, I mean, and it's not just joked about or portrayed, it's portrayed on TV this way because it's happened in life this way. That teacher's super hot, or I like, you know, all the time those kinds of jokes have been made. And it's important for us to try to act on the right side of things. The right side when no one is watching. What else? I saw another hand. Yes. I love that. What's your name again? Marty. Marty said fostering a culture of trust. So yes, we are. We have to try our best to sit in the seat of the teacher with that. And you will learn more about that much later in your training with Amber when you do seat of the teacher. What else? I saw a hand. Yes.
So we're dealing with people, right? So ethics, my HR mind kicks in and just says that it's the baseline for like right. So it's an expectation for people coming into your class and yourself as a teacher, so that you can always start somewhere on the common ground, because everyone has their own beliefs, their own right and wrong, but ethics creates that foundation for us.
I love that. It is these give us guideposts. Yes, it creates the foundation of how one should act and move forward. Yes. Yes. The transparency and the honoring, the mutual respect is so important, because as a teacher, we're not always going to get it right. Like in the classroom, or I don't want to say in the practice room and in life, we're not always going to get it right. But to try to uphold the respect both ways, that's very important. Yeah. Yes.
I think it's important to talk about ethics for yoga, because yoga is not just a form of exercise or, you know, flexibility or what have you. It's a mindset, it's a philosophy. So just practicing the movements doesn't give you the full scope of what yoga actually is.
Yes, absolutely. It's full spectrum, not just physical, but emotional well-being, mental well-being comes into play. And we are not, as a yoga teacher, let's be clear, we're not experts in diagnosing shit, okay? Diagnosing anything, okay? However, we have to respect that we are, the way Erica de la Quadra puts it, shining the lantern when we are teaching. For those brief moments, we are shining the lantern for all of us to walk the path, for all of us to try our best to keep everyone's holistic well-being in mind. What else?
I'd say, you know, the teacher-student dynamic is important. So as teachers, we need to kind of pull that integrity, but then also the ethics wise. So you don't get like these charlatan type teachers who are teaching like the bad way, not bad ways, but like the improper ways to be doing it, and then giving, I guess, feel that maybe a bad name without respect.
Yes, I love that. Not just respectful of the people you're face to face with, excuse me, but again, just like what we talked about in Sanskrit, we're honoring the roots of yoga. We want our best to operate in a way that's honoring the lineages that we have come from, our teachers, everything that's come before us, because this is ancient, and it really requires our utmost respect. Anything else you want to throw into the pot? Okay, well, I would like for us to read through the Cambio Ethical Guidelines. These are, and so I'm going to, Michelle, I'm going to share screen. Michelle, was there anything you wanted to add? I just now am looking.
No,
Okay,
no, but I am tracking the ethical guidelines
okay, great.
on my screen.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, well then I'll share screen just for if anyone ever comes back and watches this, which who knows? Page 7. So this is Georg Feuerstein. He was a yoga teacher and a scholar. So these ethical guidelines are adapted from his book, The Deeper Dimension of Yoga. They are Cambio's guiding principles. We also have, we are going to touch on code of conduct and Cambio's statement about donation yoga. Awesome. It's like I'm reading this for the first time, but I'm actually not. Okay. So what I want to do is just whomever gets to read number 1. Whomever wants to read.
Yoga teachers understand and appreciate that teaching yoga is a noble and enabling endeavor, which aligns them with a lifelong of honorable teachers.
I feel that we have just talked about this, right? Yes, but this is something we've just touched on. Honoring the lineage, the long line of teachers. Teaching yoga is noble and an ennobling endeavor. So already there's a reverence to it. We're not just teaching fitness classes. And I'm sorry, because maybe some of you are fitness teachers and you're like, but I bring a lot of, I don't know, I bring a lot of sacred into my fitness classes, and that's great. But we are honoring and recognizing that this is a noble endeavor. Number 2, who would like to read?
Yoga teachers are committed to practicing yoga as a way of life.
What does that mean?
Things like that, when you approach the world, you approach problems, you approach challenges.
With a sense of confidence, because
If I can stick to crow, I can stick to anything. If I can balance on one leg, I can do anything. Because what happens on my mat supports me when I'm not on my mat. Because breathing happens every day, and all I have to do is remember to breathe.
Yes.
That's all I do.
Yeah, no, that's great. That was like the theme of a yoga class there, Jen. What else does it mean to practice yoga as a way of life? Yes.
So part of yoga and being a yoga teacher and being inclusive, right? But I feel like we need to practice that outside of the classroom or outside of the practice space, right? Not just being inclusive when we're teaching yoga, but trying that all out.
Yes, and if you all wouldn't mind, especially in the back, speaking out so that Michelle can hear these excellent answers. But teaching yoga is not just in the room. It is practicing yoga while you're outside of the studio space. What does it mean to practice yoga outside of the studio space? What does that mean? What does that look like?
I think it's practicing speech, right? If we're talking about any true good values, it's not living those values in our life. We come off and,
Yes, values, trying to live your values authentically.
I was gonna say that, also being a student yourself, even though you might be a teacher, but outside of teaching, always having nothing. You're gonna learn, you can put yourself in the student perspective, you can grow your practice, whatever that looks like for you to become a better teacher, to teach students better, just, it's something that you're actively learning too, so you're not ever at a higher point than any of your students have.
Totally. I love that. We are still we're on the path of endeavoring to learn and to be better. Absolutely. And to remember that big piece of humility, it's important. Yes. What did you want to add?
Yeah, I bring up what you said, because giving others the same.
Speak
sort of
up.
what- Giving others the same sort of like grace and compassion that we should give ourselves during the practice, outside of the practice.
That's great. I love, yes, absolutely. And you all will get more into this with your book club, but it's also the living the yamas and the niyamas and living the 8 limbs of yoga. So you'll learn more about this in as you're reading True Yoga. But yamas and the niyamas, they're the first 2 limbs of yoga, which are basically the code of conduct, how you treat others and how you treat yourself. Yes.
I see yoga as a lifestyle demonstrated through mindset and behavior of continual honoring. As been said, the body, mind, and spirit of both self and it's like it's continual and it's seamless. It's inside and outside the studio. It's how we behave with the clerk at the store, the barista at the coffee house, or our fellow students, or our teacher. It's just, it's thinking about the sanctity of the body, mind, and spirit of self and others, and behaving accordingly.
I could not have said that better myself. It's Scott. Was it Scott? Okay. I'm just trying to remember that. He said the sanctity, to always remember the sanctity of not only ourselves, but others in everything that we're doing in all walk of life. That is so true. That is Om. That is Om, y'all. Those of us that did Sanskrit. That is Om. Let's move on to number 3. You guys are so good. We'll never get through these. Number 3. Impeccable standards of professional competence and integrity. I feel like we've started to hit on this. We need to know not just being, not just living with integrity, but keeping integrity at forefront at the workplace and knowing what's expected of us in the code of conduct in the workplace. Great. Number 4.
Yoga teachers dedicate themselves to a thorough and continuing study and practice of yoga, in particular the theoretical and practical aspects of the branch where Hatha Yoga can teach others.
Great. So I'm interested in that part, the last part, in particular, the theoretical and practical aspects of the branch or type of yoga that they teach others. Here's a question. All of you going through 200-hour, will you be an expert in yoga? Will you be an expert in any particular kind of yoga? No, sadly, I wish, but this is just the beginning. And so it's important for us to also be forthcoming and honor whenever we're going out looking for jobs. We'll get into this in Business of Yoga, but you be clear about the style you teach. That doesn't mean you can't learn about more other styles. It doesn't mean you can't learn more. We want you to learn more, but definitely from this program, we would not go out into the world saying, I can teach any style of yoga. You'll still need to learn those styles. But we are students first. That's what this one is saying, which I feel like we've really tried to hit home with already in our discussion, is we are students first. That's what this is saying. We as yoga teachers, whether you decide, so here's the thing, spoiler alert. After this program, whether you decide to, quote, teach yoga or not, you will be teaching yoga. You are an ambassador now of something that hopefully transforms you, and hopefully you can share some of that light with others. That doesn't mean that we are experts by any means, but we continue the study and practice of yoga forever, forever and ever. Amen. Number 5.
Yoga. But it's a word of substance abuse, and if for some reason is chemical dependency, will stop treatment for their fusion from drug and alcohol abuse. In that case, it will do everything in power, including full accountability and support.
Why do you think this one is in there? You can't guide others if you cannot, if you are veiled, if you are unclear. And that's a hard truth. We're talking here about chemical dependency, but it really goes for moderation in all things as much as we can. Avoiding substance abuse. And also, I like that this is not just saying, and if it happens, because it does, because human beings, it's important for you to hold yourself accountable and to let others hold you accountable. They'll do everything in their power to stay free, including full accountability to a support group, because you're not ostracized if something like that happens. What the big thing is that you hold yourself accountable and that you are supported. Anything else you want to say about that one?
I just think that we have a lot of really addictive substances in America.
Yes.
That people tend to grab us because they don't know how to deal with the stress and yoga not ways to help with that. And so if you're developing and using something that are not alleviating that stress in a helpful way, then that goes back to that just everything that you will really help teach you that other people are probably using.
And it's a really great, this one is such a very important guidepost to come back to, because if you are a teacher and you are chemically dependent on something of this nature, substance abuse, we're saying, substance abuse, and again, it does happen, but then it allows you to ask the question, am I in line with what I should be doing? Not just ethically, not just morally, am I in line with how I'm living my Dharma, which you'll learn more about what Dharma is. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Anything else? That's a big one.
This is a great way to demonstrate integrity. If I fall from grace, I recuse myself from putting myself in front of students. I rally around my community to get me well, and then I return. So there's restoration, there's growth. I think this is a great principle because it says, if you fail, you're not excommunicated.
Correct.
If you fail, you can heal, and the community can help you heal. But, have integrity and step away from a position of influence for a season until such time as you've been restored.
Yes.
That's the beauty of yoga.
Yes. I am like wanting to be like, hallelujah to all of your answers. But yes, the fact that it is, okay, all of us at some point will fail. Maybe not in this way, but we're human. It happens. There are mess ups that happen. To know that you're in a position of influence, just as you said, to take a step back and still be able to trust and rely on community that you've built in order to, yes, in order to heal. There is restoration. Yes, but we have to hold ourselves accountable.
But is it failure though? I don't know that I like that connotation as much as just saying, well, it's a misstep.
It is a misstep.
Step back.
It depends on your personal definition. Like someone could very well see themselves like, I failed at this thing. And that's something they have to work through, whether it's to redefine that for themselves, to find a new word, to reframe everything in that way. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, it depends on what you see as failure. Number 6.
Yoga teachers will accurately represent their education, training, and experience relevant to their teaching of yoga.
Great. So we've already touched on this. Accurately represent your own education, your training, and experience. Doesn't mean you can't continue to learn more, because you will. Number 7.
Yoga teachers are committed to promoting the physical, mental, and spiritual well-being of their students.
That's pretty key, which I think we have touched on already. What comes up for you with this question? What does that look like if you're committed to promoting the physical, mental, and spiritual well-being of students?
You show up on your map, so they do.
Yes,
Just because you're leading the class, doesn't mean it's better.
correct.
Because someone in class can teach you something about yourself and you don't see that coming yet. It's holding space for others to be vulnerable enough to give part of themselves to you. Because that's the gift of being a yoga teacher, is that you're a class full of students that, like Eric told us in our class before, they showed us. If you go in there, yoga's everywhere. And but yet they chose you to be their teacher for that Sunday class. And what a gift, what an honor. So why not give that love and that respect and that willingness back to your class and return that energy, and then you get to go on with your day, and they've made you a better person, and you've made them better.
Yes. And it's also about, in the same line, Jen, of honoring that, that gift, it is also, being able to create boundary for yourself and for them. Honoring the position. Number 8.
Yoga teachers will abstain from giving medical advice or advice that could be interpreted as such unless they have the necessary medical qualifications.
Is anyone in here a doctor? Physical therapist? Okay. Anyone here a mental health professional? Someday. Anyone here a registered nurse? Yeah, and what are you? Dietitian, great. So it is perfectly okay for you to bring that experience to your teaching. However, as a yoga teacher, we do not diagnose, just like we said, we do not diagnose. There is no, well, I think it could be this, because let me tell you, it will happen more often than not when someone will come out of class and say, yeah, I've just injured, there's this place here in my back and blah, blah, blah. Or, I don't know what it could be. What do you think? And our answer should be, seems like you need to get that checked out with a health professional. And here's some things that might help with it. Definitely you don't want to do anything that hurts yourself further. That's basically the scope of what we do, is say, isn't that interesting? We help people notice things, whether it be mental, physical, whatever it is. And then we hold the space for them to notice that. We definitely don't diagnose. Anything else you want to say about that?
Quick, connector, I guess.
Yes.
With that, I think it kind of goes into the commitment to promoting physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is also maybe understanding different resources that your community may have in order to, when you have a student that's on this, that way you can be like, I'm not the right person for this, but maybe check out X, Y, and Z, just keeping up to date with kind of things like that, or things that can, if somebody's like, hey, I'm having a really hard time with like inner energy, like the energetic, whatever. Giving them resources so that they can also learn without you having to be like, cool, I'll give you a whole lecture after class.
Yes,
Uh,
great.
but to be- Making sure you're up to date on things that are happening in your community, the things that people in your community who you know through whatever, that can help your students with whatever may come up.
I love that. Yes. And there are resources, like one thing that's coming up for me since you said energy was like Reiki, things like that. We give hands-on adjustments, but that does not mean that we understand or know all of that energy healing. Or I'm not the right person for that, but have you had it diagnosed? But have you thought about trying physical therapy? But have you seen a dietitian for that sort of thing? Because people will ask things about that too, especially the more they learn about chakras and things like that. They'll be like, something might be going on with my third chakra, and you can't say if it is or not, but you can recommend. Yeah, that's great.
Research that they can do.
I love that because that's also being just informed and community oriented. Great. Yes.
Yoga teachers, it makes sense for us to have our own like referral resource network and like have people that we refer out to who can come to it.
Sure. I mean, I think that's totally appropriate. Do I have anything like that at the ready? No, but people I know who might be in a certain field, I'll say, oh yeah, you should try my friend so-and-so, or whatever it is. Yeah, sure. I love that. What are we on? 9?
Yoga teachers embrace the idea of sinfulness in dealing with students and others.
What do you think is the most important part of that? Truthfulness. We have to be, it goes back to being honest with ourselves in order to be honest with others. That's integrity, that's authenticity. Great. That's respect. Yes. Number 10.
Yoga teachers are open to instructing all students, irrespective of race, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, and social or financial status.
Enough said. Yeah. Inclusion. Above all. Yes. Number 11.
Yoga teachers are willing to accept students with physical disabilities, providing they have the skills to teach those students properly.
What if you don't have the skills to teach those students properly?
People and make sure they're being safe and know someone you can refer them to.
Yes. Perfect. It's again, well, something that comes up in my mind right off the bat is saying, I'm not the right person for this, but we have, like if it was someone who had physical limitations and were in a wheelchair, we have a yoga for disabilities Saturday afternoons with Morgan. Amazing class. It's yoga, adaptive yoga. So know your references. Yeah. Adaptive yoga. And you can actually do internships for adaptive yoga and learn about adaptive yoga with worldwide teachers. Number 12.
Yoga teachers will treat their students with respect.
Which we've said. Yes. Number 13. It's a big one.
Yoga teachers will never force their own opinions on students, but appreciate the fact that every individual is entitled to his or her worldview, ideas, and beliefs. At the same time, however, yoga teachers must communicate to their students that yoga seeks to achieve a deep level transformation of the human personality, including attitudes and ideas. If a student does not overly change or the student's opinions seriously and keep the process of communicating yoga teachings to him or her, then the yoga teacher is free to refuse to work with that individual and, if possible, find an amicable way of resolving the teaching relationship.
Do we have anything to say about that one?
It's heavy.
Yeah.
So obviously something, happened that they had to elaborate.
Does also have to be negative, because I think it's just, identifying, like, I've been to yoga classes where the way they taught was just not my book teaching. But there was nothing wrong with it, and I just had to say, well, we're not the teacher student for each other, so it's almost like asking us to recognize we're not gonna get along and have the same views, but make sure the afterthought is peaceful.
Yes. So I wish that the world of yoga were all rainbows and sunshine and puppies and unicorns, but it isn't. And hard things come up, but it doesn't necessarily mean bad. It is, again, going back to the respect that we have for one another and for the student, and honoring it might just not be the best fit of a teacher-student relationship, and how we can best do that peacefully, I think is a key point, Jessica.
I think it's about boundaries as well, right? If there's something that, or if there's a difference between people, it's good to know when you're not the teacher or like you said, not the student. Teacher.
About boundaries, Michelle, that they said, yes. Anything else? Yeah.
To really talk about how yoga seeks to achieve deep level transformation of personality and as you did, it's not something that's superficial on our surface level. And so like the expectation is that kind of you're gonna have like a deep level transformation. And if somebody's not ready for that, I think like it's just so important to make it so clear, right, that you're not going to compromise your own values.
Yeah, great point. That it was said that I'm just trying to I'm trying to translate for Michelle, in case you can't hear anything. But that the fact that there is space and potential for deep transformation, there are people who might not be ready for that, students who might not be ready for that. And for us to be okay with that and to honor that as well, I think is really important. To recognize that is really important.
So does this mean that the teacher has to subscribe to this idea that yoga seeks to achieve level transformation in personality, including attitudes and ideas, before they start teaching? Why do I ask this? Because my ambition is to teach people with disabilities and older people to move, to lengthen their life and to improve their quality of life. That's my primary motivation.
Love it.
On day 2 of teacher training.
Yes. Love it.
So I'm involved into this whole life transformation idea, but really I just want to help people improve their lives.
Yes.
So I don't have to ask, my 92-year-old geriatric student, hey, are you ready for a major transformation? Or would you like to be able to move a little bit?
Yes.
Can you comment?
I can, in that I think you are already more deeply transformed than you know. And just because we have that awareness doesn't mean we're going to force that experience on someone. Absolutely. So if your primary, this is great because you start asking yourself over the course of these weeks and months, for those of you in extended in years, not only your question of why am I doing teacher training? Why do I want to teach? That will evolve, and that's good. That's okay. And some of the answers to those questions will remain the same. It's great that you're going to ask, in any public class, I don't think that I would insist someone or expect someone to feel anything on a deep level of like personal transformation. That is not what, there's potential for it there in class after class, but that's the work that the student must do. That's not the work that we as teachers put on them. Does that sort of comment enough on the question, Scott?
Yeah, that's sort of.
I think that's very important that we're not, it's going back to the, hey, we are not holier than thou. Here is a modality for you. What you get out of it is up to you. Yes, I saw your hand first.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that. I think I fall in that bucket as well, where it's like, I'm not gonna throw deep level transformation on someone at this level, but I think your definition of a deep level transformation is different for everyone. And so helping them into what vision move is a deep level transformation for them, right? And so I don't think you have to, it doesn't include ideas and personality, right? But being able to move in a certain way, in a better way, or whatever, age you're at, will then eventually affect your personality, because then maybe your hobbies change, you can move, you can do things. And so I think it's not that deep, but it is deep, right? And so it's different for everyone.
Holla.
I think it's totally, but someone might look at it different. Yeah, it's a spectrum. I think you're still doing the same regardless of what the goal is. So.
That's great. I love that comment and that perspective. Again, we as yoga teachers do not have the answers. We have not been touched. We don't have the healing powers. So we have information to offer and we have our own experiences to offer. And then it's up to the student how far they want to take that. Great. Love this. What else did I saw your hand and then your hand?
I was gonna go off kind of that.
Yes.
I was gonna say that I would argue if you're teaching yoga at any level, whether or not you put the intention out there or the verbal, like, this is gonna change your whole life. I think no matter, as long as you're teaching it, it leaves that space open, like she was saying, that whoever it is, the disabilities, the older community, it's gonna give them like a little insight to just what they can do and what it can do for them without you having to give this precursor of like, yoga's gonna change your personality, your views, your attitude, everything about you. I think it's important to remember that as teachers that it is totally subjective to whoever you're, teaching this very sacred thing to. You get to share that space with them, and if you can, it goes into everything else. You're living your yoga, you're an example. So, you're leading by example at that point. So I think it just, for argument's sake, it doesn't have to be like, you want them to be able to move more. That's enough transformation right there. And you can bring a transformation from within yourself to make it more if they want it to be more. And if they don't, then, you've got a transformation because you can touch your toes now. You can do X, Y, and Z. So
Absolutely.
being open to, even within yourself, like that can change constantly.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, it is definitely not us saying, I have the answers to, I have the secret and I will give it to you. It's definitely not that. It is the work. It's the work of personal responsibility, and there is potential there. Yes.
Well, I was just gonna say that in reading that, thinking about personally what yoga is, it's a very creeping practice. And I didn't say creepy.
Creeping, ing.
Creeping practice. At least that's how I kind of think about it
Mhm.
in my experience / journey
Yeah.
with it. And so I think that's kind of you as a yoga teacher, that's what you're giving people, because when you teach the class, you're teaching it under the ideals of yogic principle and statements that I know nothing about yet and all that fun stuff. So I think every time you teach a class, from just taking them through the flow to teaching them about modifications, adjustments, giving them the opportunity to set intentions or giving them a theme that creeps in. And there is this slow transformation, I think, that can take place whether you even know it's happening or not. Because I know that's what's happened to me. There's a lot more peace in my life, just the way I think, not 100% all Zen and stuff, but I've noticed I handle things a lot better. And I really do attribute that to my even sporadic practice of this. So, and I think a lot of that has to do with my teachers with whatever they've given me every time I've shown up.
Hmm.
So, or the way, or what I've taken from them when I show up. So.
And it really is being open to the yoga. The teacher must trust that the yoga is gonna do its thing. Just like we say the student has to trust that the yoga will meet you. Yoga will do its thing. Yeah. And you're planting, you might not be planting seeds, but what you repeat, yoga plants the seeds. Yes. Great. Anything else? I'd like to move on. And number 14.
Yoga teachers will not engage in any form of sexual harassment of students. Yoga teachers will enter a potential sexual relationship with a present or former student to seek immediate counsel of their peers before taking any action.
So what's this saying?
You want to date that hot yoga teacher, you probably ask about it first.
This is in general, please don't, yes. Ask about it first. Who is this hot yoga teacher? Or maybe try not to go to that person's class anymore and get to know them on a personal level. That is not teacher student. Please don't date your students. It can happen. And if it does, yes, it'd be great for you to seek counsel with your peers and with your bosses and those sorts of things, with your mentors. That it's just a sticky situation. It can be sticky and it can work out sometimes. I know a teacher, a good friend of mine who's dating, who used to be his student. I mean, they're the same age and stuff. Not that that matters, but it went through a whole, like, she stopped going to his classes. They got to know one another, that sort of thing. So there is not a weird power dynamic going on. And it's not just the power dynamic thing. It's just, this is good not to do. It is very good not to do. Yes, Mark.
So what would you recommend that?
So you are on your path of learning at the same time, which is a special thing. And it's not necessarily, it doesn't mean that you'll grow at the same trajectory, but you are a part of one another's spiritual sangha. You're also already married. So that works in your favor. This is for people who meet in a student-teacher relationship first. Yeah, you're already married, you're okay. What if you're not married and but you're gonna be? If you already had a consensual relationship of partnership, great, good. This is when you have met as student and teacher. But this is also important. I wouldn't just say, Yahoo, we're always in the clear. It's a good question to come back to, you know? It's a good question to come back to and make sure, is everyone still okay? Are we still okay with that? What's happening going on for us? I saw your hand and then your hand.
But really what more knowing how to define the relationships with who you teach and who you work with will help you. So in your mind, you go in with, these are my students, this is the type of relationship I will maintain with them. That'll help you. So.
Oh no, we so appreciated the levity. We did appreciate the levity.
Yeah, just kind of having that definition yourself before you start teaching. I mean, things do change. But with that, it's just having boundaries for yourself that you know you're gonna abide by will help you stay on path of that, will help you to not get curious person.
And I think that's kind of goes back to that whole idea of, the world is sexual expression. You can't harm anybody without being sexual porn. You can't, everything.
Yeah.
Every touch can be sexualized nowadays. And so remembering those boundaries protect you as a teacher, it protects your students from accusations. Because that's what happens in the world. bad word to ruin a reputation. And as teachers, we have a responsibility to protect ourselves from that and protect our students from feeling that way. Because sometimes, and I'm gonna speak for myself, I come to yoga because I've experienced trauma, and this is a safe space. My mat is where I am the safest. No one can touch me unless I say so. And that has to be respected at so many levels in the world that we live in, because you don't know what somebody's feeling on that mat. You know, and touch can be pleasurable, it can be excruciatingly painful, depending on where you're coming. And when we remember to approach that way with students, we, again, we respect them, we respect ourselves, but we also respect this space. This space is safe. This space isn't sexual. That's not what this is for, right? And I think remembering that and carrying that through you in your practice as a teacher reinforces those ethics of mutual respect. Yeah, parts 5, attraction happens, we're consenting adults, right? That's the whole idea. You're a consenting adult, but you also have an entire other class body to think about, because that may not be appropriate for your class. I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like I was
Yes.
going all over the place, but
No, that was great. That was great. Oh, I chatted to Michelle so that she could know what we were talking about in the back. No, that's okay. It's okay. She gave a thumbs up. She's all right. Number 15.
Will make every effort to exploit the constant potential dependency of students and instead encourage them to find rigor in their freedom. And we can help our students if they come to us for advice or give them appropriate referrals, but there has to be that boundary, or we cannot be like their person, no one person, right? Then I think the line boundary gets blurred a little bit, and that just might not be appropriate. So.
Yes. That's such a good point. Yeah, I have to give props to one of my teachers, Laura Lance, an amazing teacher, but I think she's great with that, with empowering students and always remembering the boundary of what is appropriate and empowering those to do their own work. We're not here to save anyone. We are not here to be anything other than the person who's holding the lantern for a few moments to shine some light on hopefully what is a truth or a new aha for that person, for that student. Yes.
This kind of is something that like a trauma therapist once told me. It was like, when people come through the door, you never know what's happening in their life or like what's going on now. And sometimes you never have a reliable source of someone they can depend on or like trust. And when they give you that, it's like even more special for you to be respectful of their trust and not having no thoughts down, because that could cause irreparable harm.
Yes, boundaries are important, and respecting that trust is so key. It's key. Thank you so much for saying that. Anything else? We need to move on. 16.
Yoga teachers acknowledge the importance, the proper context for teaching, and agree to avoid teaching in a casual manner, which includes observing proper decorum inside and outside the class.
What does that mean for us?
Professionalism.
Yes. And I mean, this is just something good to keep in mind, because it is casual. Like, we have a really special community here at Cambio, for instance, and a lot of teachers and students are friends and all of that sort of thing. And there's still, and I'm not trying to harp on the teacher-student relationship, but we are, to go back to, we are in a place of business. Even though it can seem casual here, we're still, when we are teachers, or like, for instance, when I come take a class here at Cambio, I still try to maintain some semblance of, I might not be teaching right now, but professionalism because I am staff here, or if, you know, I work here. Yes. Number 17.
Towards other yoga teachers, goals, and traditions. The criticism has to be brought up. This
It should be done in fairness and with appropriate regard for the facts.
It
Oh, it doesn't? This should be done. Oh my gosh, you guys. Okay, wait. I'm just gonna write this on the board because I feel like this part is important. Done. Oh, hilarious. Okay. This should be done in fairness. Oh my gosh, inappropriate. I'm sorry that I'm sorry for my handwriting, but it's so the end of that sentence. It's very important. This should be done in fairness and with appropriate regard for the facts. Appropriate regard for the facts. Okay, so this means we practice tolerance toward other yoga teachers, schools, and traditions. We want to honor other, okay, here at Cambio, we're not going around trash talking other studios here. That doesn't help anybody because in all seriousness, we want everyone to be practicing yoga, as many people as possible. If they go to another studio, great. If you all go to another studio, that's fantastic. Wonderful. That's more yoga you're practicing. When criticism has to be brought, I can't. This should be done in fairness. In fairness is like such a key piece, and with appropriate regard for the facts. And you will learn more about this. You'll all have a workshop giving and receiving feedback with grace, because we've got to hold one another accountable to, and this doesn't mean that, again, that we're an expert over someone else. This is offering up fair, appropriate regard for facts when teaching. Yes.
For this one, you know, try to keep emotions out of it, and you can approach it by like, you know, this is the action and this is the impact, instead of bringing, I guess, just a lot of emotion into it, you know.
Yes, well,
Just focusing on the facts. This is what you did, this is the impact it had, and, you know, kind of let them take that for what it is, maybe.
absolutely. And like I said, we'll get into it more at a later date and time. I have to write a note here that this is missing. That a later date and time, but it's important that, again, going back to professionalism, we're being professional, but that doesn't mean we're being cold or emotionless. We've got to keep it, there's a trust that happens whenever you give someone feedback or whenever you ask for someone to give you feedback. There is a trust there. And we're trying to maintain fairness and not come at it with like whenever you didn't teach half pigeon, that hurt me. That hurt me emotionally. It's my favorite. And I think your class is wrong and I will not be back to it. You know, we wouldn't say that sort of thing because we try not to think that sort of thing. Okay. Anything else you want to say about these guidelines? Yes.
Because I feel like personally, some of yoga outside of obviously, I mean,
Mhm.
some of that is interpretation. So if someone is interpreting something based off of their experiences and how they're receiving the knowledge of yoga, how do you handle that? Is that where the facts comes in?
Facts. appropriate regard for the facts. And that's what's difficult is there are so many, it's difficult in yoga. There are some things that are definitive answers. And there are some things where they're like translations, even translations of Sanskrit, which we just learned. There's a lot of different translations or translation of an experience. That's objective, right? Subjective is opinion. No, objective is opinion and subjective is, maybe I've got it wrong. I don't remember. Subjective is opinion, objective is factual. Yes, and it's just sticky, but that's why it's important to have one, a guidepost, and two, ongoing conversation about these things. Keep it in mind. Yeah. Anything else? Because there's still more. We have just really quickly. Oh my gosh, there's a little bit more, and then we're going to take a quick break. Cambio guiding principles. Is this in your manual?
Yeah.
Great. Yes, there are only 3, so this is good. Cambio guiding principles. Yoga is a way of life, and its teaching should be affordable and widely available. How does this show up in what you know of Cambio? It's donation based. How else? Yes, we have a wide variety of classes, a diversified teaching, and it's donation based. It's available online. That's amazing that we can offer trainings and classes online to the best of our ability. It's even the accessibility, yoga being accessible. We are a school. We offer trainings, all of that. Number 2, community is important. Everyone is a valuable member, and we are here to serve our community. Do you think this holds true for a Cambio, as the personality of Cambio? Why do you think this is important to them, to us? Yes. If there's no community, who are you teaching? So the Amber and Austin, when they founded this, they decided these guiding principles for the personality of their place of business is yoga is a way of life. Its teaching should be affordable and available. Community is so important. Everyone is a valuable member, and we're here to serve that community. As a teacher, if you go on to teach here, we're here to serve the community. Number 3, everyone is perfect just as they are. Everyone has their own path and is at a different point in their life. From physical abilities to beliefs, everyone is at the right place at the right time. How do you think that Cambio shows this? Or what does this mean? Inclusion.
Accepting that other people may not be at the same place as you, and that's okay.
No one's going to be at the same place as you. That is okay. We are all trying to stay aligned with our dharmic path. We're all trying to live as best as we can. Where you're at is okay. Let me say that again to each of you. Wherever you are at right now in this moment, that's perfect. That's okay. As you begin this training, that's perfect. And we try to maintain that for one another, the teachers as well. We each have our own path, and we're at a different point in life. And all ships rise with the tide, right? We can't tear one another down. We can only lift one another up. That's what we really strive to do here at Cambio. Cambio's statement about donation yoga, and then we'll have a quick break. Cambio is changing the way yoga is accessed in Colorado Springs and now nationwide. Woohoo! Key to Cambio's mission is the accessibility of yoga to all those who seek it. Realizing part of the barrier to its access is financial consideration, Cambio offers generosity-based classes. In a nutshell, come as you are, and let your heart and personal financial situation be your guide as to what you choose to contribute toward Cambio's expenses. We believe in the goodness of the universe and people. We also realize that there is a reciprocal bond between our students and us. We couldn't offer classes without their ongoing generosity. We are all in this together. Do you think that statement really encapsulates all three of those guiding principles? Anything else you want to say on this?
When you mentioned that, you can do yoga online,
Mhm.
so you can take it from your home?
Yes. Quite a bit of our classes are offered live streamed on Zoom. And we also have, of course, our trainings with the option on Zoom. We also have an on-demand library that it is subscription based, that you pay like some small fee a month. Yeah, $20 a month, and you have access to all of the Zoom classes. And there's some other special things on there. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say, even beyond like the classroom, I was looking at the especially in college and afford it because there was not monthly, or I could do whatever, so I think it's even beyond the classroom, it's also like the yoga teaching. Yeah, so much more, that's why I really looking at this, so.
It's pretty amazing that they've been able to keep it open throughout the pandemic and keep it working and still pay teachers. It's amazing. Yes. So moving on from this, I just want you to think about what yoga ethics mean to you, how you apply ethics from here on out to your behavior as a yoga teacher. And most importantly, how will you commit to yoga as a way of life? Because this really helps us keep in the why of why we're doing it. Okay, friends, everyone gets 3-ish, 4 minutes, 12:24, get up, move, get some water, back at 12:24. We have a lot to cover. Woo! I'm gonna pause this. Where is that?
Is this the lunch break?
Not yet. You get a
Oh.
lunch break at 1:10.
1:10, okay.
Yes. Pause. All right, everybody, let's get settled. Let's get settled for Cambio sequence overview. Now we are switching brains a little bit and talking about the Cambio sequence overview, which might be fun for those of you who Sanskrited this morning. Sanskrited is not a verb, but I just made it one. Does anyone, this is probably so wrong, but does anyone watch RuPaul's Drag Race? And you know, where they do, I always want to go Sanskrit. Cambio sequence overview. This is page 84. It should be in your manual. And at any time that you need to get up, move around, grab water, go to the bathroom, you want to start snacking, that's okay, because we are still, this is more chatting, but it's just switching brains a little bit. So Cambio sequence overview. What you are learning in your posture clinics. Well, for starters, Cambio, this is for just so you understand where we're coming from. Today, we're just talking a little bit about why the sequence is the way it is, so that you can start looking at your classes whenever you're practicing, when you're taking class, you can start looking at it not only from the lens of a student, but the lens of a teacher. so that you start understanding the energetics a little bit, why everything is in place like it is. Each series has a purpose, and by series, and it's listed on your, is it page 84? Did you all find it? Okay, great. Page 84 in your manual, why this series, when I say sequence, or sorry, when I say series, integration is a series, Sun A is a series, Sun B is a series, why they are in this order, and what the meaning is. This is the building block. Today is a little bit of a building block to sequencing. So much later in the program, I keep saying much later, but you will see Laura and I later in the program in several weeks. Sequencing will dive more into how you begin to create your own sequences for classes. And keep in mind, you're not changing the whole magic box of stuff we have. We always want to look at, in our teaching, the Cambio sequence as the skeleton, as the framework to how you begin to change up the sequence a little bit much later in your teaching. Okay, so I'd like to ask first, who, whenever you got your sequence and you've been studying it and you're learning it, are you ever like, oh, yes, I have practiced this at Cambio before, just the way it's written? And you got to do it, those of you who were new yesterday, and then those of you last weekend, you got to do it once, right? How did it feel to you? What do you remember about it?
Has a rhythm.
It has a great rhythm. It has a great rhythm. It flows very nicely. It is, I think, in terms of building energy, then keeping energy going, and then bringing it back down. What else? Are there certain series that are difficult, more difficult for you than others physically? And then are there certain series that are more difficult than others mentally? So let's start talking about it. Integration. What is integration? Do you remember some poses from integration? Child's pose, cat-cow, tabletop. This should be super fresh, maybe, to those extended students from this morning. Down dog. And where does integration end? And what is that in Sanskrit? Yeah, there's something you remember. Wow, that was just this morning. Can you believe it? So integration, what is the purpose, do you think, of integration? The balance of the body and brain coming together, because what do you think is the most popular state that a student will show up to class in? Frazzled, hectic, frantic. We all barely just made it. We've been through our day or whatever, or we didn't sleep and we're starting our day this way with a million things on our mind. And integration is the time to draw inward, to begin to warm up the spine. Sun A. Sun A warms the body. It connects breath with movement, introduces flexion and extension of the spine. Do we know what flexion and extension are? Yes, flexion, forward fold, extension. Yes. So what is the purpose of Sun A besides what's written there? Anyone notice any particular part of their body that starts opening? The spine, great, starts elongating. You feel the chest open up a little bit more. What else? I think it's really, yeah, it really starts to help open the legs. We're warming and energizing. So if integration, we start in child's pose more often than not. Sometimes maybe not, but you're beginning practice in a small, remember, life cycle. You're beginning in a small little, like, I am of the earth. I am connecting to the earth, to my mat. I'm bringing things back to a grounded space, coming back to the here and now. And Sun A is a further continuation of, I'm beginning to clear out. Sun A is a great way not only to energize your body, but to clear the mind. If you're ever super tired and you really want to take a nap, but you don't have the time, do a few Sun A's. Because when you're just focused on flowing and moving with your breath, it really burns off whatever else is going in the mind and gets you into your body. Sun B. So Sun B is next. What are we introducing in Sun B? Engagement. What postures are being introduced in Sun B? Chair, warriors. Lunges. We are building heat. So now that we've got everything kind of cleared out, we're beginning the work of internal alchemy. Yes, physically, we're expecting a lot more range, or we're trying to encourage more range of motion. We are asking the big muscle groups to work a lot more. So far, if this is the timeline of the Cambio sequence, 0 minutes to 60 minutes, we've started here at integration. We're pulling everything down and then beginning to with our Sun Bs. It introduces, now this can happen earlier sometimes, you'll learn this in sequencing, but in the Cambio sequence, it introduces lateral flexion of the spine, which is side bending. In what pose? Reverse warrior, yeah. This also deepens mental focus. We have some moderate twisting. What feels like almost a twist in Sun B? Can you think of a pose that feels there's like a twisting action? Extended side angle. Oh, well, I agree with you. Extended side angle. Okay, so are things pretty intensified by this point? They are getting there, and it really depends on the day, right? Sometimes all of those high to low planks, all of the half series, all of the repetitions of Sun A and Sun B, some days you might practice and you're like, this feels great. I could keep going. It's like I had espresso or whatever. And some days you're going to be like, I don't want to step my foot forward. I don't want to stand in warrior 2. The body, the mind, it depends. It really depends. Depends on the weather. It depends on your hydration state. It depends on how physically tired you are, how mentally tired you are, all of those things. And as teachers, so one, while you're practicing, notice these differences as you're practicing over these next several weeks. Just notice them and try not to judge them. And 2, now that you're thinking as teachers, why would it be important to be so repetitive in the first half of class?
It's they're distracted. They come in distracted. to help them Get there.
I love that. Yes, we're trying to help cut out the mental chatter. What else? Repetition of muscle movement, it does generate heat. Longer holds, even, you know, how we hold for alignment purposes in Sun B. Yeah, what else?
To just kind of like nail in, this is what we're doing, because it is a repetitive thing, Jen, Vanessa, you're kind of just like really nailing in there, this is what we're doing,
warm up the large muscle groups in order to start working more refined areas. Yeah, great. Okay, so we get to core about halfway through class. About-ish, depending on what's happened with this sequence. And what does core feel like for you? I'll be honest, for me, core, like belly up core, that's definitely a mental, like a series that mentally I'm like, not my favorite. So for some of us, it is our favorites. For some of us, it is not. What do you think is happening with the energy?
Warming up. It's just more focused in your abdominal area, so it's a different sensation than when your legs are warm and your arms are warm.
Okay,
Instead of like, we've been flowing, and now we're sort of taking like, not a break, but like a shift in like some amount that I feel like after a little while.
we have really been working the energy up with all of these standing poses. And when we come down to the floor for core, we are shifting the energy. We're bringing everyone back down to a place of, okay, come back to the ground. We might ask you to work internal muscles of the abdominal harder, but it is shifting energy for sure. It can be a little break, and it can also feel like a little boost. Yes.
It's your central most muscle system, right? And so I guess I'm just like, if I was very little, I know to start with the core makes sense because then you think a lot about training. So what's the purpose of putting core right in there when it's so important to every other muscle?
So, great question. So this core series on the floor, definitely, do you think that's the only time we focus on core in a vinyasa class? No. So I would like to say we do begin with core engagement, and teachers will teach this sometimes. I don't know, because I don't remember off the top of my head your cues, but in tabletop, it's pull the belly in towards the spine, feel a muscle engagement there. So no, you're not like contracting everything, but you are aware there, and there's a lot of core work. So, and at this point in time, everything's kind of warmed up and expanded. So that's why this core series is in here. It's to kind of give a little break to, okay, instead of continuing on with standing poses, we're going to just bring the energy down to the ground, but keep the energy, the internal heat moving. Does that help a little bit? Okay, so next, twists. What is in your twisting series? Can you remember? After core, what do you come up and do? So you're getting back up onto your feet. That's coming up soon. So we've got revolved crescent lunge. After core, we have the whole series with revolved crescent lunge, with lizard lunge, with side plank. So this is your twisting series. What do you normally notice while you're practicing by this point in class?
You're working on
You're working pretty hard. Yes, I love that visual. That is my mental state. And it's my physical state. It can be. Yes.
I really like built up a strong ujjayi breath, and twists are like, for me, the most important place where I need to like make sure I'm maintaining that, because I think it's really easy when you're twisting to like have your breath get off and you're straining so much to try to twist, and it can become like hard to continue to breathe and remember to breathe.
Yes. I love that. It's so not only is the work, and that's a great indicator that physically the practice is becoming more difficult. So we took it down the energy a little bit. We're bringing it back up. Whenever our breath begins, when notice inequities in the breath, it's a great indicator that physically the practice is becoming difficult, or we're just not focused on breathing. So what's nice is in the twisting series, we have to start focusing on breath in order to go deeper into the twist, to go deeper into lizard lunge, to even get into side plank. Let's be real. You have to use your breath. You have to use a little bit of oomph, a little momentum there.
I always find that this is where I want to take a quick break,
Mhm.
definitely get some water. And if I'm not feeling it that day, that's when I want to shake it out or even child pose. But my
Yes.
teachers never let me because they're taking right in. So I'm wondering why? Why don't we intentionally introduce a little break here?
Okay, so with this, okay, so I'm so glad you asked this. All of these series they might not have a physical break, but in between each of these series, you should get a slight mental break. And the physical, quote, breakness of it is coming back to what pose? Down dog. Down dog is our neutralizing, let's clean the slate pose. Now, yes, from down dog, you can always come to child's pose. And here is a part of why isn't a break, Scott, introduced, a formal break? It is because we're trying to empower students to take breaks when they need. So someone someday might need to take a break in the third set of Sun B. Maybe early on, maybe when we're in the first part of Sun A, who knows? And you're like, I'm just not feeling it today. And it is up to the teacher. This is part of teacher personality and noting whatever is happening in the classroom. That's when they get to decide when it's appropriate to offer a break. If they see, and this is a part of what you'll learn as a teacher, if you see your students red-faced, panting and struggling, maybe you want to bring everyone down for a sec to grab some water or to rest in child's pose or to do a little meditation. That is a part of classroom management. There's no formal break where we say in the sequence, give them a break here, because one, it's up to you as the teacher. Two, it's up to them as the student. But again, coming down to the floor for core might not feel like a break, but is definitely shifting the energy in that direction. Yes.
And Austin had said something last weekend, of course, they weren't here when we were doing our sequence, and he said, like, the whole purpose is to build heat. So when you're taking a break and sipping water, you're kind of counteracting, you know, the purpose of the practice.
Yes, I would, I love that Austin brings that up. Also, just in general, us Westerners do not hydrate. We don't drink enough water. So if you're like on the point of, I still say, please do take a drink of water. But I also love that he's been bringing up lately, like the challenge of maybe this is not the time to quench that fire. Yes, we are trying to build heat still by this point. So after twisting, which the twisting, it not only cultivates core engagement and awareness, it builds balance. Do you ever feel like your balance is challenged in that twist? Yeah. And in Vasishtasana, the side plank, it's also energizing, but you're building balance, which moves us to the next series, which is balance. Who really loves balance? Who is like someone who's just not a fan of balance? Well, so those are good things to know about yourself and about your practice, because then it allows you to become more accessible as a teacher. And this is where we start noticing the places in the sequence that we struggle with, bringing that sort of recognition whenever you're teaching can be a really great way to connect with your students. So if balance is something you struggle with, it might be the sort of thing where, like, when you're teaching, you can say, and I know this is hard. This is not my favorite either. I'm always falling out. Because that, again, teacher-student relationship, they could be like, wow, you mean the teacher falls out too? That's great news. That makes me feel a little bit more, yeah, human. We all do it. So balancing is like a use it or lose it skill. And depending on the day, again, depending on the weather, balance is hugely indicative of your emotional state, which is a real bummer. Some days I'm like, oh man, this is telling me something. But it requires mental focus. It requires a certain surrender, does it not? You just have to be okay. You can't like muscle yourself into a balance pose. You have to allow a certain surrender or ease to the posture itself. The whole series of balance requires you as a teacher reminding students that this is not the time and place to get really gritty with it. This is the time and place to maybe ease up a little bit. Yes.
Self-compassion, just because like you can't really force yourself into realization and just being gentle with yourself and like that's what you should do.
Yes, good. I'm glad the teachers have reinforced that for you. I'm glad it speaks to you. It is. It's a perfect time. Balance is a perfect time to be aware of self-compassion. As a teacher, you can talk about that. You can also, we're sustaining energy a little bit here, I'll say. You can also bring into your class, this isn't the time for comparison. What's happening on your mat is yours alone.
And like when you're balancing, it can be like fun and light and playful, but I think that's the reason why it's sort of emphasize that.
Yes, I love that. And to that point, energetically, so we came down to the ground, worked the core, worked the core. We're all like, yeah, okay, now we're gonna get up. Yeah, okay, and now we're gonna do some twists. And notice how they are fairly close to the ground. Okay, I'm still gonna work hard in this lizard lunge. I'm still gonna work hard in this side plank. All of this is still like sustaining a workable energy. When you come up for balance, there's lightness. That doesn't mean that the balance will be easy, but you get a chance to connect now with the ether a little bit more than you did when you were working that previous series. That makes sense? Everything is a little bit more light, a little more in the sky. I love that. Next, triangle series, which should be about, so hips and all of that winding down, we leave for like the last 15-ish minutes of class. So triangle is about your 20-minute mark. What's happening in triangle series? Do you think the energy is sustained? Is it coming down or is it going up? I do think so too. Who else? Yeah. Also, sometimes it can feel like sustained, depending on how difficult the balance pose was, moving into triangle series. Now, our balance pose in the sequence is eagle, which is still something that's contracting. So then to come out of all of that contraction, and Bakasana, crow pose, that's still, you're contracting, you're making yourself small a lot, you're using a lot of muscles here. So what happens and gorilla pose. So what happens from all of that to this? Everything is extended, stretched out, and open. And you're using your core.
It's kind of like you're going back because you're going back to a lot of leg strength and core.
Yes, this is really an excellent, I love triangle series. It's an excellent place to really experience all of the work and contraction, all of that. So at this point in triangle, you're like, oh, one more standing sequence. Okay, triangle, goddess pose, wide-legged forward fold, triangle, all of those things. They can feel difficult, but it also is giving you a chance to expand all of the energy that you have really worked on to this point. I think it's so genius. Triangle series right after all of that compression with the balancing with eagle and everything, it's just pretty genius in my mind. There is a balance between effort and ease, as it says on our page. It creates length in the body. It is the last standing challenge of practice. So it means as a teacher, and notice this in your classes, notice if the teacher by this point, it kind of becomes your cheerleader. That it is our job to be like, okay, here we go. Whatever kind of modulation is happening in the voice, they are trying to carry and sustain that energy with you as well. And I'm sorry, Michelle, just raise your hand if you've got questions or unmute at any time. We're doing okay on time. Anything else about triangle? I love personally a wide-legged forward fold. It feels like such a nice break, even though you're still working in that pose.
I don't know, I think too, like, I really like to move my wrist back and forth in that pose, and that's a perfect setup for folks to do something.
Yes. So would you say, well, think about goddess pose, Devyasana. Is that a closed hip pose or an open hip pose? It is open. Then wide-legged forward fold, is that open or closed? It is closed, technically. But that's the funny thing about this. So the thighs are externally rotating. The thighs are internally rotating. But what's nice is you can bend, you can shift side to side, and it's getting more, this is where, when you'll get into this in anatomy, whenever someone says, my hip's bothering me, there's a lot of anatomy that goes on with the hip. The hip is a huge thing. We say hip for like 50 billion different things. So being aware of like, yes, this is starting to open and bring more awareness into the hips and back into the lower part of the body after we've twisted the spine, after we've been doing all the balance, after we did arm balance, all of that stuff. Hips. What pose is in our hips series? Half pigeon. Who's a fan? Ah. Who's not a fan? Which is okay. So know that the more you're aware of, there's like 1 or 2 people. You love half pigeon or you don't. And both types of students deserve to have a really good experience in half pigeon. So that means we know the modifications, we know how difficult it is, and we, again, try to bring peace around that with our words, with our cues, with how we're teaching. It's a time to turn inward. Is it mentally a difficult time? It can be. So it can be a time of great release, of emotional release, whatever. It's very common after a really hippie class, or if you're in half pigeon for a while, depending on what you have going on in your life, it can be a real emotional release. It might not happen right then. It might happen way later in your day or in your week. But mentally, it's the time when we start to think, okay, I'm sitting still for a while. What do I need to pick up at the grocery store? What of my to-do list have I not finished? what are we gonna eat tonight? Ah, and all of those different things. Or did that person mean that when they said that thing to me? Whatever it might be, like those thoughts tend to come up. And I want you to notice how well you are staying present or not in this series the next time you practice it. And keep that in mind as fuel for when you're teaching. Again, this makes you more relatable to your students when you notice these things.
Question on, pigeon.
Yes.
Why do we do half pigeon instead of full pigeon? Full pigeon.
Do you mean, and so full pigeon are a couple of different things. Do you mean fire log pose, which is where the shins are stacked like this?
No.
Do you mean king pigeon where you're like this and then you're like this?
No, I think I mean 45-degree angle, knee forward, toe back, towards groin versus 90-degree when it's shoulders.
I'm so glad you're asking. Okay, so that is half pigeon. That's just a person's body in half pigeon. And this is great for everyone to know that depending on the name of things, you just have to ask clarification, because half pigeon is where one foot is forward. So it can, and one leg is extended. It can look like this, where the foot's pulled in, the toes pointed. The knee can be forward, it can be out. Or half pigeon can look like this, where the shin is parallel to the front edge of the mat. Sorry, Michelle, that you're not seeing. Half pigeon can look like this, where the back toes are tucked. Half pigeon looks like this. You'll often hear this called sleeping pigeon when you're folded over the front leg. All of those variations are half pigeon. Full pigeon. I know this as fire log, but sometimes people will refer to this hip opener as full pigeon. And then king pigeon, which no one ever teaches, and you especially don't need to worry about in the Cameo sequence, is where you're in this position and then the back foot you've got a hold of and you've got your arms overhead and you're like, what? Yoga journal or whatever. So this brings up a really good point, which is we learn to the best of our ability, and you keep learning. You'll have to study on your own what certain poses are called, what they are, all of this kind of stuff. That was a great question, and I hope I answered it.
Yep.
Spine strengthener. So this is just a little thing that is thrown in. It's not thrown in, but it happens at this point. Name some spine strengtheners. Yes. Okay. So locust pose. If anyone remembers the Sanskrit for that. Shalambhasana. Yeah. We also have a spine strengthener that happens earlier, right before hips. What's that? No. No. Spine strengthening, normally what we call a spine strengthener is you can think of as a back bend. So camel is a spine strengthener. Upward facing dog is a spine strengthener. That's definitely, so cow is definitely extension of the spine. All of these require extension of the spine. So locust pose, floor bow is a spine strengthener. Again, you don't have to worry about that for this sequence for the purpose of, but our spine strengtheners at the end of practice are camel before hips, and then the locust pose. And what locust pose is important, why? Locust pose is you're on your belly. So look, so here's the difference. Camel pose, you're like, locust pose, you are, you're working all of the posterior chain muscles. Yes. You're lengthening through the spine. You're not just like trying to crack things back. You cannot really, yes, there's less potential for energy or injury. You can definitely overdo it in camel. This is allowing everything to stretch out while strengthen at the same time. It's one last push of effort. This is where you really have to be like, okay, team, whoever is in your class, this is it. Because sometimes they won't feel like it. Have you ever been in a class where you're like, but I don't want to do any more work? But this is the last little push of, you can do this. It's not just physically nice for the spine to strengthen it, but it's mental strength as well. Emotional strength. And then, our last and most favorite sequence maybe, and potentially, I mean, this is arguably what we come to yoga for. This is what we're teaching for. It's to bring people to the surrender series, which is Shavasana. And I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I just have a quick question about
Yes.
this spine strengthening. I'm
Yes.
sure we'll like get more into this, but why isn't headstand with the triangle series? Like when you're doing wide-legged bolts, that seems like the perfect place to like go into a headstand. Like I'm not really sure like how you get somebody into a headstand, you know, in any of the poses in spine strengthening. It doesn't seem like natural or intuitive.
Yes. So opportunity for restorative inversions, it says, which means what's an inversion? Yes, yes, exactly. Yes, no, collectively we'll all get it. It's been a long morning. So an inversion is where the head is below the heart. So is down dog an inversion? Is crow an inversion? If it's practice on the hands, yes. Is waterfall pose or legs up the wall, is that an inversion? It is. It is. Technically it is, because the blood is draining from the legs. And even though you're like, but technically my head is not lower than my heart, everything's still, you're still getting the flow of energy and the blood flowing this way. So it's an inversion.
So, is it called plow, the one where you put your legs back?
A plow is where your legs are up and over. That can be an inversion. That's something people will work into after shoulder stand. So shoulder stand could come at this time. Bridge could come at this time. Now, again, we're getting into sequencing 101. I still want you to focus on this cambio sequence. But so headstand, traditionally, it could come at this time, but that doesn't mean that that's how we teach it here. And I think oftentimes you will be in classes where if in wide-legged forward fold, things are still kind of winding down, and a teacher might teach headstand or say, if you have an inversion here in your practice, you could do it now. That's okay. It's okay because we've already worked the energy down to the ground a little bit. It's your last ditch of effort. Is that an okay-ish answer? Yes. And in general, headstand is just that I don't teach it. I don't teach headstand in a regular public class. I wouldn't teach it. But they are giving that as an example of a restorative inversion. Spine strengthening opens the heart and properly directs energy along the spine so that we get to surrender series. So we have, so this is the place where the ego death happens. We want to give at least 5 minutes for Shavasana and to come out of it. It's really important to not skimp people on their Shavasana time. Some days It just happens where, something ran over or whatever it was. And you have, you know, and you might not have the full 5 minutes, but we really try to give everyone a good lengthy Shavasana, because this is really where the magic happens. This is where the true work is solidified. This is like the kiln of when you put the pottery in the kiln and fire it all, get it glazed. All of that work could turn into mush if we don't, and I don't, full transparency, I don't understand how pottery works, but I think I understand enough to make the metaphor. We do the thing, we make the pot, we have to put it into the kiln in order to solidify it. And that's what Shavasana is doing. Okay. Anything else? Mm-hmm.
Do other studios or Veda yoga tend to use a similar sequence or is it very unique sequence?
This one is, depending on where you go, vinyasa vinyasa is linking movement to breath, right? This is similar to, but there are a lot of variations depending on where you go. I know that I think both Austin and Amber, their initial training was at Core Power. So if you go to Core Power, you might see similarities, and but this is their own sequence. And it really depends. It honestly depends. I'd say whenever you go to a vinyasa class, you can expect this sort of energy level where you're starting from the ground, you're working your way up halfway through class, then you're really sustaining energy and getting to your highest point with, like, whether it be balance, whether it be hips, whether it be an arm balance, whatever it might be, and then cooling the energy down. But I would not expect there to be a lot of, so the first half of class, you can expect it to be similar with variations. The second half of class, I wouldn't say that would be, it's typical. This is typical, but I wouldn't expect to find it if I went to another studio. What else? Okay, there is a page that I just want to tell you about before we go. That should be next in your manual, called Cambio Cueing Methodology. Is that next? So I want you to take a look at that in your own time. You'll get into more with Erica Kafka in all of the anatomy. This is an excellent way to kind of start thinking about cues, your verbal cues. We have we've listed them in 3 categories, and Austin is the one who kind of came up with this. It's pretty brilliant in terms of like learning, okay, I've got directive cues, which means they're alignment focused, they're safety focused. That's what a lot of your manual, the cues in your manual are like, directive cues. And it gives you kind of like a guideline on how to start working with new cues once you've got these down. So this is something to think about way in the future. You're like, okay, I have all of my cues memorized. I'm starting to learn my own voice as a teacher. I want to incorporate new cues. And this is a way to look at that, this table here. What other questions before we close up shop? I just really, I thank you all so much. I think you're incredible. I can't wait to enjoy and watch and be a part of your journeys through teaching. And thank you so much. We're gonna floop around the room real quick with a word. We're going to end. Oh, wait, no, you have a break. You still have a whole other half of the day. I wanted to word with you all. Okay, well, we'll end this way in bowing to one another. I just, hands to heart center. I really appreciate you. As always, reach out to me or with Laura with questions about any of this. And you were so terrific today. Good luck this afternoon. You've got a break until 1:30. Okay. bowing to each of you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye. Thanks, Michelle. See you in 20.
Back on this
Oh.
station,
Um,
on this same link, I mean.
oh, wait, extended. Do you all have anatomy this afternoon or I'm just making that up? You do? Yeah, so come back to this link.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
just gonna leave it on. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.